Hello and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Zelinda and Emily is sitting here with me, and we're going to talk to you about everything you need to know about choosing a teacher training program, a yoga teacher training program. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty and the video part of our webinar is not working, but I think we should be totally fine because mainly what we want to deliver is you seeing us isn't a big deal. What's more important is what we wanted to talk about. Okay, so yes. Do you want to give any other more broad introduction? Yeah, that would be a good idea. You want to talk about your background a little bit?
Well, and we should talk about your background as well.
Okay.
So I'm Emily Loop, and I am a yoga teacher, and I run a teacher training program here at the Yoga Room. I'm the director, and Zelinda is a faculty member. So we have an in-house teacher training program, and then we've both also gone to teacher training. And I've done a lot of different programs, so I have a lot of experience with what to look for and having both a good and not so great experience in a teacher training program. So we're going to pull from our collective knowledge and experience to share with you some information on what to look for when you're choosing your own teacher training program.
Very good.
What about you? What's your...
So you are very modest about your training, so you should explain a little bit more. You have thousands of hours of teacher training under your belt.
Right. So I have done a 200-hour teacher training, a 300-hour teacher training, a 500-hour teacher training, all in yoga, with also specializations like prenatal and postnatal and fertility. And I've also done extensive yoga therapy training in multiple programs. And then I've also gone to massage school. And so collectively, I probably have about 22 to 2,500 hours of training, and in doing that, I have gone to ashrams and in-house programs and extended programs and short duration programs. So there's been a lot of variety in the types of trainings I've attended.
Very good. I'm going to look like a slacker next to you. So I've done a 200-hour teacher training program that was in person here in the Austin area. I've been teaching. So I, before I was a yoga teacher and a yoga studio owner, I worked in high tech and I worked in engineering and in marketing. So I have a business background and then a yoga background. And, I combine that to run the studio, but I also combine that knowledge when I help Emily teach the classes for our teacher training program. So I teach all of the business of yoga courses, which I think we'll get into that stuff a little bit more when we get into talking about our curriculum. All right.
Yeah. So do you want to jump into?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So okay. Yeah, we kind of, in the welcome email that we sent out, we outlined a kind of agenda of topics. So let's just go ahead and begin at the beginning and talk about specialization of teacher training.
Okay. So there are teacher training programs that are very broad in their scope, and they are just say hatha teacher training, and then there are programs that are much more specific. So something like a vinyasa teacher training where you're learning very set teaching skills. And so we're talking about what you're looking for and how to decide what you're looking for in signing up for a program.
Right. Yes. Yeah. There can be, even more specialized specializations. So, general topics might be, like you said, a hatha program or a vinyasa program or maybe a hot yoga.
Right.
And there's also branded kind of things like core power or the forest yoga.
Right. Or even power yoga, the Baptiste method. Yeah. So deciding what it is you want to do with your teacher training long term is really important so that you don't end up pigeonholing yourself in a training where you're not able to go out and teach a broader audience if that's what you want to do.
Right.
And sometimes you choose a program because you think, well, this is offered at the time I want to be taking a teacher training, or it's offered in a format that I'm interested in, but it's not necessarily the long-term, the best idea for you long-term. So researching is really important.
Right.
And thinking ahead, being able to kind of look forward.
Yeah, it's I have a couple of ideas here. So one is, yoga teacher training is an investment of your time and of your money. And so you definitely want to take your time, like you said, and do the research and make a careful decision about the training that you take so that it will serve you in the long term.
Right.
The other thing is you kind of have to, there's a business aspect to yoga, and we don't always think about that. So, when you're a yoga teacher, you are going to be teaching, and you're going to be wanting to earn money for your teaching.
Right.
And so it's important to pick the right program the right teacher training program where after you graduate and you begin teaching, you'll have a market. You'll have students who want to take that training from you in the particular area where you live. It's important to think about I think it's important to think about that even before you get started.
Yeah, and one great thing to do is if you know you want to teach in specific studios, go talk to those studios and ask them what they look for in their teachers. Because if you do a really narrow specialization and then you go to the studios you're interested in and they say, well, no, we don't really offer that kind of class here, then you've got a teacher training you may not even be able to use.
Right.
So it's really good if you have an end goal in mind to talk to people.
Right.
And find out what's needed.
Another thing is that the style that you practice may not necessarily be the style that you want to teach. So just because you practice at a hot yoga studio may or may not mean that you want to take a hot yoga training.
Right.
Just as an example.
Right. Definitely. I've seen people get really limited by that kind of thing. They do the thing they love, but it's already saturated in the market they live in, or there are not enough studios that offer that kind of class, and so they end up with a training that may not really get them jobs.
Right.
Yeah. So thinking about the job that you want and then kind of backtracking from there is a good way to go about it.
That's a good point. I like that idea. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of specialization?
No, not that I can think of. I think that's pretty good information on that.
Okay, let's move forward then about the content and the quality of the curriculum. Well, that kind of ties in with Yoga Alliance, so maybe we can talk about both of those together.
Okay.
Do you want to begin?
Sure. So when you're looking at your teacher training at a program that you're interested in, you definitely should dive into the content and what's being offered and not just sign up based on the fact that somebody did the training. You want to look at what they're offering and see if it meets your needs and goals with what you want to do with your teaching. Some programs are real heavy on one specific content area. So they may be really heavy on philosophy, but you're more of an asana person or vice versa. So take the time, see if you can get maybe a syllabus or some kind of information about the program and look and see what's going to be offered in their curriculum. So the Yoga Alliance piece, as far as curriculum goes, so maybe we can rewind. Do you want to talk about Yoga Alliance generally and give a perspective about who they are, what they do? Yeah, so the Yoga Alliance is really the only kind of quote unquote, governing body of yoga in the States right now. And some studios offer teacher training programs that are Yoga Alliance approved and other studios do not. And so kind of going back to the conversation about knowing where you want to teach, some studios will require that teachers have a Yoga Alliance approved teacher training, that they've graduated from that, and others may not care about that. So if you're looking at a program that is not a Yoga Alliance approved teacher training program, but you want to teach in a studio that requires it, you need to rethink that, because that could be a really important limiting thing for you. Right. And so I personally didn't get Yoga Alliance approval for a little while because it wasn't necessary for your teacher training. For my teacher training. Well, it wasn't necessary for teaching, being out in the world as a teacher. Okay. But it's, I think, important for a teacher training program to have it, so that teachers that go through that know that they always have that ability to be registered with the Yoga Alliance. Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying. So you personally, as a yoga teacher, didn't register yourself with Yoga Alliance initially. Okay, got that. But later I did. And then I think it's really important for a teacher training program to have that, because if you go through a 200-hour program that is not Yoga Alliance approved, and then you want to go on to an advanced program, they may not let you into the advanced program because your 200-hour program was not approved. Right. So it is important to keep it in mind if your goal is to stay in teaching yoga for the long haul and long term. Right. You probably want to look for a Yoga Alliance registered teacher training program. Yes. Which is, so the terminology here is a little bit confusing, so I want to make sure that we explain. Yes. You can be a registered yoga teacher. That's for, for a yoga teacher to register themselves with Yoga Alliance. There's also Yoga Alliance registered teacher training programs
which are taught by yoga, registered yoga schools,
Right.
RYS.
Right.
So that the yoga teaching program needs to be at a registered yoga school in RYS
Yes.
to have that
Right.
approved program.
Right.
Okay, and so I was trying to, thank you for the introduction. I was trying to link Yoga Alliance to curriculum. So Yoga
Yes.
Alliance has some specific requirements, minimum
Right.
requirements for the curriculum,
Right.
and it's pretty detailed.
It is,
And
and it's
pretty
on their website.
Mhm.
If you go to their website, you can certainly look up what the number of hours are per content component. So, for philosophy, there are 25 hours, and for practicum, there are X number of hours. And so all programs that are registered with the Yoga Alliance as a teacher training program, they have to meet these minimum requirements. And so it's really helpful for you to look at that and understand, comparing programs side by side, where the hours are allotted, and
Right.
that it's a certain level of teacher that's able to teach in that program also. So you're going to get a good quality teacher teaching in a program that's Yoga Alliance approved school.
Because in order to teach in a registered yoga school,
Mhm.
you have to be a registered yoga teacher.
Right, with experience.
Right.
So
Oh, with experience, yes.
Right.
So, and I think, talking about Yoga Alliance's curriculum requirements, to me, it looks really balanced. They have, they cover everything. There's philosophy, there's anatomy,
Yep.
there's asana, there's practicum.
ethics. Yep.
Yeah, it's a very broad and
It is
diverse.
all encompassing
Right.
for what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to the teacher's qualifications as well, I have seen in certain circumstances programs that were not Yoga Alliance approved schools, they were running teacher trainings where the people teaching in the teacher training had less than a year of experience as a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
So, it's something to keep in mind, is that it is going to ensure that you get more quality in the program that you take.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Anything else we should talk about as far as curriculum?
Well, I think that making sure, as I mentioned earlier, that the curriculum matches your goals and expectations is important, because you don't want to pay so much money and end up in a program where they're not covering information that is important to you.
Yes.
So ask questions when you're looking at a program.
And something I just thought of that isn't like specifically on our list, but maybe it's also a good idea to find out who's teaching.
Right, definitely. It is a good idea. Find out who's teaching and maybe do a little research about their background and their experience. Yeah, because I have heard some complaints about people that have signed up for programs, and then they find out the teachers in those programs they do not have very much experience. So yeah, you want to learn a little bit about your teacher and where they did their training.
Right. Yeah. What style they teach.
Right.
How long they've been teaching,
Exactly.
where they did their training. As much information as you can find out about the faculty.
Yes.
Is important.
Definitely.
Yeah. So another thing, kind of also related to Yoga Alliance, is the length of the training. So how many hours of training? So this thing can be a little bit confusing, because the terminologies have changed. So the 200 hour, the 300 hour, the 500 hour.
Right.
So when you begin studying to be a yoga teacher, the first training that you take is a 200 hour training. Typically, so Yoga Alliance requires 200 hours for the registered yoga teacher credential. Yeah. So it's a 200 hour training. Then if you want to do an advanced training, this is where the naming just gets a little bit tricky, because it used to be called a 500 hour training. Now it's called a 300 hour training. It's actually the same thing, or it can also be called an advanced training. But those three are all actually the same thing, because you take the 200 hour, you add the 300 hour, and then you can register as a 500 hour registered yoga teacher. So if you are looking around and you see the name 300 hour teacher training, or 500 hour teacher training, or advanced teacher training, those are all probably the same thing if it's a Yoga Alliance registered school.
Well, there are some programs that are 500 hours from the onset.
Oh,
and so instead of doing a 200 hour program, you can actually do a full 500 hours.
Okay.
So with that, you have to really know about the program and what your goals are, because you could end up with 500 hours of training in something that you don't really even know that you're going to be using.
Yeah, so that's probably a
huge
specialization.
Yeah, they're usually specialized. It's a big commitment. So I encourage people to do a 200 hour and then to build on that.
And teach for a while, and then figure out what you're going to do.
Exactly.
Next. Yeah.
Because when you start teaching, you start to figure out who you want to work with, what populations you work with well, what your passions are. So if you go straight onto a 500 hour, you might have spent all of that time and money and realized that you wish you would have done something different.
Right.
So definitely starting with a 200 hour.
Okay, great. Class size. So some teacher trainings, oh, wait, actually, I'm going to rewind there for a second. Number of hours of training. Another piece that we should talk about is sometimes when you research teacher trainings, you find accelerated, intensive, short duration trainings where you do like your entire 200 hours of training in 4 weeks.
Right.
And sometimes you find where they're stretched out a whole lot. Like ours, for example, is an 11-month program.
Yeah.
So what are the pros and cons of those different, and are there other kind of setups?
Yeah, there are
training?
different setups. So I have done a couple of different things. So my 200 hour, like yours, was extended out a little bit more. The benefit of that is that there is some saturation time. You can go home, practice what you've learned, and really kind of start to take that in and process all of the information and sort through it.
Right.
The shorter duration programs, in my mind, those are truly for people who have been practicing for a long time and know an extensive amount about yoga. So they don't have to process and take in as much information because that information is coming at you in volume and mass quantity.
Right.
So you're not able to go to bed at the end of the day, take in everything and get up and do it again the next morning. So that is really for someone who already knows what's going on and they just want to get the certification under their belt. There are some programs where you go and you do like 2 weeks and then you go home for a little while and then you come back and do 2 weeks, which one of my programs that I did was like that. And that was a therapy training. So I was already in the yoga world and so it worked at that point, but I don't know that being a beginner teacher that would have worked for me personally. I need some time to like go back and read my notes and take in the information and feel things in my own body too and in my own practice.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that, there's so much information that you're absorbing each day of training that it's really good to just have some time to process it. Like figure it out in your own practice, figure out, maybe observing other people practice, figure out really what it is that you're learning before you go and try to learn something.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for a more advanced training, it's okay. And for shorter duration training. So some of the specializations that I've done, like prenatal, postnatal, those were shorter period of time. It's more saturation, but it's also, you've already done a lot of other training. So you have a really solid basis. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Very good. Class size. Pricing is the next thing. Class size. I skipped class size. Okay, so class size. So, the training that you and I did probably had about 30 people in the
30
class.
plus, yeah.
Are there trainings bigger than that, more than that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there definitely are. There are trainings where you see 50, 60 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, my personal experience was that I was not really able to connect with a teacher as a mentor because there were too many people, trying to get the same person's time. And a teacher only has so much time to give. So there was not a lot of, intimacy, you know what I mean? And like, you couldn't really build solid, strong relationships with the whole group. And so it kind of became like small little groups of people.
Yeah.
And there were people in my training I hardly got to know at all, which was, kind of disappointing.
Right.
So I personally like a smaller class size, also for asking questions.
Right.
There's more space for asking questions and getting the information you need if there are less people asking those questions.
Right. Yeah. The smaller student-teacher ratio.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine taking a training where there were 50 people trying to, take the training all at the same time. Like in college, for example, you go and, there's maybe 100 people in your class, but that's different because in, learning to teach yoga, you need some hands-on experience. You need, the one-on-one with the teacher to make sure that you understand and you know what you're doing and that you will be able to do a good job of teaching.
You need some time with them outside of the teaching space too, to be able to ask questions and maybe even watch them. In a college situation, that doesn't happen. You don't talk to your professors outside of class. So even if you have a class with 500 people, it doesn't really matter. But in a program where you need to be able to go home and, learn about something and go, I don't understand this. I need some more help on this. A smaller class ratio is clearly going to be more beneficial.
Right.
So that you do have that time and that you do have the teacher's energy, because it's a lot for the teacher too, to have that many people in the room and give their energy to that many people and give their attention. So,
Yeah, and as a frame of reference, our teacher training here is probably on the maybe very smallest
Yes.
end of student-teacher ratio. We accept only 12 people per teacher training class. So, and we
Yeah.
have a faculty of 3.
Right.
And so we have, we're very available
Right.
to the students who come to our training.
Yeah, I think it's a really good setup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, based on all of the different trainings I've gone to and the number of students, I've gone to trainings where you could rotate in. So you didn't have to come to every weekend and you could show up to some weekends. And so that was also very strange because then you're really not making any kind of connections. There is no level of knowledge and intimacy with your classmates because you don't even know who some of them are. You've never seen them before.
And I'm trying to think, what is the value of creating relationships, building relationships within the teacher training program? And it's not just for the sake of, oh, look, I made some new friends, but it's for here's my network of, yoga teachers, so that if you need to refer someone or if you want to, get a second opinion on something, you're developing your network.
Right, definitely. Well, and then those are friendships that you'll probably nurture and have for years. I know I'm still really good friends with some of the people from my teacher training program, and that was 8-9 years ago. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so yes, so let's talk about pricing. Pricing. I just got an interesting email yesterday from a lady who was interested in attending our training. And I didn't realize that this is a thing, but she said that you can do trainings online that are very inexpensive.
Yeah, you can. Everything we've just talked about, the kind quality. Of speaks to what you would be getting out of an online training. Right. So with those online trainings, pretty much what they do is it's like yoga in a box. They send you some books, you download some things, you read about that, and you become a teacher. And my question is, would you want a yoga teacher that had done their training online? Right. And the value of the experience of the people you're learning from is incredible. It's huge. And you don't get that if you do an online training. Right.
It's kind of like if you're trying to do yoga with a DVD.
Right.
It's not the same as if you do yoga with a teacher.
Yeah. And it's not even like doing yoga with a DVD. It's like doing yoga with a recording, with an audio. I mean, that would be the comparison.
Right.
So yes, those things are available. Does it mean that they're good? It doesn't. And I'm not saying they're bad. I've seen the curriculum. I've actually read about many of these and read their curriculum and looked at the textbooks that they offer. And there is definitely a huge value to working with someone who has experience with bodies and yoga, and that is available to you, that you can ask questions and learn from what they've learned over time.
Okay. And then some trainings are very expensive. I heard recently, I think that some hot yoga trainings are cost as much as a small car, $15,000-$16,000.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty shocking.
It is pretty shocking. Yeah. And you have to think about with a program, it's just like any other market value idea. If the price is too low, is there quality there? If the price is too high, are you stretching yourself to a point that you're not going to be able to do it and comfortably do that? Right. I love there's this idea that in Germany that Germans have, which is if something is really, really cheap, there is a reason. This is their concept is if it is too cheap, it's because it's bad quality. There's something that's off about this. Yeah. And I recently heard about a program offering a Groupon for a teacher training. Oh no. And everyone that responded about that said the same thing. Why are they having to offer Groupons for the teacher training? Yeah. So there is, a point where it makes sense to pay money for a program that is a good quality, well thought out, well executed program. Yeah. There are going to be both ends of the spectrum though. So doing your research, looking at all these different things we've talked about, that's how you decide if it's right for you and if it's worth the money.
Yes. So you know what, now I realize that I kind of missed an important point that I wanted to talk about when we were talking about curriculum, the business of yoga. So when you do a yoga teacher training program, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to, most likely, sometimes people do yoga teacher training programs to just deepen their own yoga practice. People do yoga teacher training because they want to teach yoga. And when you graduate as a yoga teacher, you want to make money. And so the business of yoga, you want to make sure that in the curriculum that there, is more than just 1 or 2 hours about the business of yoga, because you really need to learn how to market yourself so that you can start to make money, so you can, recoup the expense
Right.
of the training that you invested in.
Yep. And so that's a viable career. It
Right.
should be a viable career.
Right.
But you have to be given those skill sets
Right.
to make
And
it so.
if you don't already have a business background,
Right.
if you don't already have a marketing background, then you don't have any experience with that. You don't have those skills. So, look to your yoga teacher training program to help provide that for you, so that when you graduate, you know how to go out and interview and find a job and, make a good impression and get hired and get paid
Right.
what you need to be getting paid. All of that. It's important to think even before you sign up for your teacher training program, what am I going to be doing after this? Or is the teacher training program going to help guide me so that I can go out and start building a career teaching yoga? It
shouldn't be implied that you suddenly know how to do business just because you were taught about how to do yoga. The two are mutually exclusive. They don't necessarily go together. And a lot of people come to yoga from a background that has zero to do with marketing or business.
Right.
So it is a huge piece of the puzzle. Becoming a successful teacher is in learning about business.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we can overstress the importance of that piece of teacher training.
Right. It needs to be robust.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing we have on our list is mentoring. So this isn't actually a topic that comes up very much at all when people talk about teacher training programs. So
no, not at all.
Tell me about your experience and tell me why, the objective here is not to talk about our own teacher training program, but it's going to, I think it's important here to talk about what we do in our training program.
Right. So when I went through 200 hours, there just wasn't mentoring at all. You had to find a mentor. It was expected, but it was not, we weren't helped with finding a mentor. And so I had to go out, and it was actually extremely difficult for me to find someone to mentor me. So I struggled with that. I found somebody, but it was actually in another city, and it was very difficult. And that was something that I walked away from my program wishing there had been more of, was that there was someone to help me kind of navigate the process of teacher training, because it's challenging in many ways, logistically, physically, emotionally, and you need someone to help you with that. And a lot of the programs I've done in the past, it's just not even discussed. No, it's not expected. It's not discussed.
Right.
So we built that into ours, and I would love to see that built into more teacher training programs around the country, because I think it's a really important part of going through teacher training is having someone help you and guide you.
Not just through the training, but maybe even after.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, afterward, when you're out there in the world and trying to figure out how to put all of this information into action, how to find a job, how to keep those jobs, how to build your student base, it's great to have someone with experience to help you. And, this idea of an online teacher training program, where is that component? Is it, it is probably not there. So you are navigating through that on your own, and then trying to figure out how to teach on your own. So looking for the mentoring component in the teacher training, I would encourage people to look for that in training.
Right. Yeah. And mentors are great too. Like if you have someone show up to your class who has some, something different going on with their body that you've never, worked with before, you can go to your mentor and say, hey, this person showed up. They have a spinal fusion. What do you think I need to know? Do you have any resources? Where can I look up information about what to do when a person has a spinal fusion? Yeah. Or, any kind of stuff like that comes up.
Well, and even just, the daily intricacy of like working in a studio and working with other teachers and trying to build your student base. Your teacher's gone through all of that, or your mentor's gone through all of those things, and they can help you deal with that, because that stuff is hard in the beginning. You're trying to integrate all this information, teach a class, which can be scary, and try to build your career. So yeah, having a mentor it's extremely valuable. I think there's no dollar amount, I can't assign a value to that piece of teacher training. It is invaluable.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I think it's, my training was quite similar to yours, and I had a mentor for a little while, but like you, she was in another city, and it was logistically very challenging to get to her classes to observe and things like that. And, that kind of, it just naturally fell apart because she was in another place. And then another mentor who was great and, kind of helped guide me through the rest of the teacher training. But I think that he was kind of the exception. He was like a really good mentor.
Right.
He would spend some time, like if I would come to observe his class, he'd spend a little time with me before class, telling me, what to expect or how I might be able to help or what specifically he wanted me to do in the class to assist. And then we'd kind of recap after the class about, this happened, this is how you should handle it, that kind of thing. And so I think that was a really valuable mentoring relationship while it lasted, while I was doing the teacher training.
Right. Yeah, it would be nice to have that extend out a little bit too.
Right.
Beyond your graduation date.
Right. Very good. I feel like there was one other thing. Oh, yeah. So I think we're through our agenda, but probably people could be interested in knowing a little bit about our own teacher training program, which is a pretty unique specialization. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we offer a 200-hour teacher training here at the yoga room that is therapeutic-based. So our specialization is more about making the yoga practice fit the body rather than making the body fit the yoga practice. And that's really, if I had to put it in a nutshell, what we offer. We work on helping everybody be able to sustain a yoga practice. And as Linda mentioned, we offer a really strong business component and then mentoring in our program. And it's extended out over 11 months. So there's time for people to process and to come back with questions. And we make ourselves very available through a private Facebook group so that people can post questions about what comes up. And then we share resources and information there as well. And, having done the training and all of the different types of training I've done, I think that what we've put together is very unique. I haven't seen anything like it.
Right.
We try to kind of combine all the things that we love about teacher training and all the things that we wished would have been available into one program.
Right. Yeah. And so just kind of expanding a little bit on the therapeutics thing, because, it's not common and people may not have seen it before. So I just want to make sure that, we elaborate a little bit more about what it looks like. So our studio, the yoga room, has a philosophy of yoga for everybody. And so it's kind of a double meaning because yoga is for everybody, but it's also for all kinds of bodies. And, like Emily said, we focus on making helping to make the practice fit the person. So, if a person is not comfortable folding forward and resting their hands on the floor, we use a lot of props. We, use blocks, or we might use a chair to rest the hands on to make the pose work for the person so that they can get benefit, from the practice, just like everybody else. And that's just a small example. I mean, that's a very simple and small example. It can be much more deep kind of adaptations and modifications and props and different things that we do.
We do a lot of anatomy in our training so that the teachers are prepared to deal with the different things that you see come to the mat, because the human body is very different, and the way people do asana now is different because of our repetitive posture and our lifestyle. Right. So we do a lot of anatomy, and we do a lot of discussion about different conditions and how to adapt the practices for them. And so we don't ever want someone to come to class and leave feeling like they couldn't do things.
Right.
And so our teacher training is working around how to adapt the practice to people, because there are ways. You just need to be able to think outside of the box a little bit.
And sometimes for people who would graduate from our training, sometimes the style of teaching that they would teach is just to help people feel comfortable, to not have pain, to not have tightness in their bodies, just a gentle therapeutic kind of yoga practice to help people feel well, rather than trying to, do a lotus pose or, some kind of fancy yoga pretzel sort of thing. So we have a more kind of functional, perhaps, style of teaching that our graduates are able to teach, after they graduate.
It's a really solid foundation for going out and learning. If you want to do specializations later, this is probably the best kind of foundational training you can do. So then you can go build on it. But this is going to be a way for people to feel comfortable, because I don't know how you felt, but when I graduated from teacher training, I was mortified of a lot of different things. And I remember a woman coming in with spinal fusions, and I thought, I have no idea how to deal with this. I am so scared. And so in writing this teacher training, it was really important to me that people feel comfortable addressing the different types of bodies that are going to walk through the door.
Well, I think what you were saying just made me think of something. I think one thing that's really valuable about our training is that we teach teachers how to think. It's not like, here's your sequence of postures,
Right.
go teach your sequence over
Right.
and over and over. You think about, oh, look, this person came in, they have recently had a brain surgery.
Right.
What do I need to know to keep them safe?
Right.
Or a person came in and they twisted their ankle recently. What do we need to do to keep their ankle safe or help make it a little bit stronger?
Yeah, and not have them just sit through practice and watch.
Right, and
they should be able to
out.
participate.
Yeah.
They need yoga just as much, if not more than other people. So how can we make it work for them?
Right. And it does. And so the graduates of our training don't necessarily even need to teach a therapeutic class, but they could teach any kind of style, but they have this foundation of knowledge to keep everybody safe.
Exactly.
So I think that's, I don't know, I'm so,
Yeah, we get real
it's our
passionate.
training, we get really excited about it.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I think it's a very good, solid foundation for any kind of yoga that a person might want to teach.
Definitely. Yeah, that was the intention.
Right.
In creating this.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry to kind of go off on a tangent there a little bit, but I think it kind of speaks to, please open the door.
Yeah.
It speaks to the importance of thinking about the training that you are signing up for and making sure that the training is going to serve you after you graduate so that you can find the kind of classes that you want to teach. All right, so thank you very much for joining us for our webinar today. If you have any follow-on questions, please don't hesitate to send us an email or even give us a call. And, we'd be happy to help you out in any way that you can. Emily and I are, really passionate about, having good quality yoga teachers out in the world. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to come attend our training, but we just want to make sure, or we want to help potential yoga teacher training candidates find the right teacher training program for them so that we have more of these high quality teachers.
Definitely. And we get a lot of questions about it. So we thought, why not put the information out there so that people can find the right thing, because it is a big investment of both time and money. So you should do what makes the most sense for you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much for joining us today. And like I said, please, feel free to contact us with any questions.
All right. Thank you.